Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining tonight's roundtable discussion on anti-racism from the viewpoint of leaders within the La Crosse region and beyond. This conversation was made possible through the assistance of partners who uplifted this event, including Black, Kia Shia, City of La Crosse Human Rights Commission, City of La Crosse Mayor's Office, City of La Crosse Police Department, the Greater La Crosse Area Diversity Council, the La Crosse Area Family Collaborative, the La Crosse County Historical Society, Turner Consulting, UWL Police Department, and the Waking Up White Collaborative. I want to start by acknowledging that we are speaking tonight from the traditional territories of the Ho-Chunk people and the Red Wing Prairie Island Indian community. We understand that the lands from which we are speaking are the original homelands of Indigenous peoples whose rich knowledge and ways of life are present and deeply connected to the land. Let's honor with gratitude these Indigenous peoples and commit to learning how to be better stewards of this land that we occupy. So for those of you who have joined us, registered for this roundtable, we invite you to listen tonight. Just listen. Actively, compassionately, radically listen. And because listening is necessary and perhaps a revolutionary part of this work, we have disabled the chat function. Instead, we ask that you engage by listening and centering the voices of those most harmed by racial injustice. We will break before the hour mark so that you can connect and process in community with others in this call. And then we will welcome you back to listen more. As a community, we have a few agreements that we would like you to join us in. We're asking everyone to put on a learner's mindset. We ask that you listen toward understanding, not necessarily agreement. And we ask that you focus on what you can change, largely yourself, but also your circles of influence. And as always, we ask that you choose growth over comfort. Now, let's jump into some introductions of our roundtable leaders. My name is Amanda Goodenough. I use she and her pronouns, and I serve as the Director of Campus Climate at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. And I identify racially and ethnically as a light-skinned, multiracial, mixed woman of color with Mexican, African, and Native ancestry. Dr. V, can you introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. My name is B. Lowe. I am the owner and the physician at the Natural Health Center in the Alaska area. And I've been living in the La Crosse area for over 35 years. And I use he, him pronouns.
Thank you. Shaundel, let's hear from you.
All right, hello everybody. I'm Shaundel Spivey, co-founder, president of Black Leaders Acquiring Collective Knowledge, as well as I currently work for the Western Technical College as a college connection manager, and I'm on the La Crosse School District School Board of Education. And I identify as Black, African American, he, him pronouns. And I also have to preface that today I'll be speaking from my personal views and through my knowledge and experience.
Amanda, you're muted.
Thank you. I wasn't able to unmute myself. Thank you, Josh. Can we hear from Rebecca next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Schwarz. I spend my my days alternating between working from home for YWCA La Crosse and caring for my son and my nephew who are both toddlers. I am white. If you need to refer to me when I'm not around and you don't remember my name, I use she, her pronouns like it says on the screen. And I have the great opportunity to spend time with a lot of people in this room through different organizations here in town. The ones that are coming to mind right now are the Waking Up White Steering Committee, working with the local Showing Up for Racial Justice chapter, the local Citizen Action Co-op, and probably a couple more that are just escaping my brain because I'm realizing I'm talking to a whole bunch of people right now. So that's what I've got for everyone right now.
Perfect. Thank you, Rebecca. Nikki, can you introduce yourself?
Ha, madakiapi, ampetuio hi ampatawi, imakiapie. Hello, my relatives. My name is Eastern Day Woman, also known as Nikki Buck. I'm from the Prairie Island Indian community, and I also work for my tribal community in the Land and Environment Department, where I am loving and honoring the land and carrying on our culture, traditions, and yeah, that's about it.
Perfect. Thank you, Nikki. And Ricardo, can we hear from you, please?
There we go. I'm still learning this stuff.
That's okay.
All right. My name is Ricardo Acevedo. I'm a he and a him, and I basically am Hispanic, but also kind of a mix of all kinds of stuff. And turns out I'm about 37% Native American too. So, but basically my parents are from Mexico. Mom is still a national Mexican national. Dad became a naturalized citizen, and I immediate past president of the Greater La Crosse Area Diversity Council. I'm also on the Immigration Task Force, and my day job is I'm with the Social Security Administration. So, and anything that I say today is my own personal views and my own opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Dr. B, Shaundel, Rebecca, Nikki, Ricardo, I'm really excited for this conversation tonight. I don't know all of you. I don't know that all of us know each other. I know some of you better than others, but just really looking forward to this space to connect with each other and have our conversation, and just hope that others are listening and can gain something, take something away from what we share. So one of the reasons that I'm excited to just share space with you all is, I don't know about you, but it's been a long year. I recognize that the issues we're gathered to talk about tonight have existed long before this year, but this year has tested me personally in many ways. And when I think about just all that we've been through, I feel like this last year has been like 10 years long, it feels like. And so I know even in my day job, sometimes when we've talked about, like, well, this is what we did last year. And I'm like, last year was 30 years ago now. Like we're at a different point. And so, but I think about like what has made this year so long and difficult. And some of the things that come to mind for me are the COVID pandemic and how it's disproportionately impacted some of our communities, the senseless and brutal loss of Black lives, brown lives too. Certainly some of the Black lives that have been more highly publicized, like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, Jacob Blake, and how the list keeps growing. I think about the inability of the president to denounce white supremacists and the Trump administration directing federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory because they are, quote, racist. It has been a year. And within that year, I've also witnessed in some of my circles a racial reckoning, if you will. And we've seen things like the topplings of racist statues or the discontinuation of racist imagery in some major sports, powerful acts of protest from small towns. I live in Melrose and was driving through Black River Falls one day and saw a Black Lives Matter protest, right? So powerful acts of protest and resistance from small towns to the NBA basketball courts. And so I wanted to ask you all, how have you been experiencing and or reflecting on the times that we're living in, the here and now, as it relates to the current racial climate? And again, just trying to have this be a conversation, so you all can just unmute yourselves and enter the space as you feel compelled. But just very curious about what you've been reflecting on, how you've been experiencing the here and now.
That is a great question. First, let me loosen up because I feel a little tense.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the way that I've experienced it, I have been emotional roller coaster all over the place, right? From tears to anger to numbness to frustration to how our questioning, right? Questioning the creator, questioning God, questioning just everything as to how do we get here, right? But we know how we got here, but when will it end? When do Black bodies become important enough to not just be slain on the street and justified? When do we recognize that economically there's huge disproportionality and we need to address that? When do we recognize that health is a huge issue? Health is a huge issue, and there's so many disparities in health and environmental justice and so on and so forth. And I think that what's happening now for me has just been constant, I always talk about the gasoline on the fire, right? Because there's always this light that has been lit because racism hasn't gone anywhere. We haven't really, we made gains, sure, but we haven't really done much to truly eradicate racism and anti-Blackness and, address many of the issues socially that we need to address. And so you have all those things. And for me, it's just every time it happens, it die down and the flame is still lit. Another killing happened, another protest happened. You add in a pandemic and it's just gasoline continuously just internally just bursting, in this nation. I think people are tired. I'm tired. I'm so tired. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. So I'm gonna let other folks speak too, but the other thing I would say is it's truly, truly, truly time for change and action.
Hello, everybody. Again, my name is B. I'm a Hmong person, and I'm gonna speak a little bit about this. I thought that I was really proud of the people of this country when we elected Obama to be our president. I thought, wow, this is cool that a Black man can be president. And then I hear people say about we live in a post-racial world now. And then now it's whoa, it's worse. It's I start thinking about almost daily about what was like back in the 1950s and 60s for the people of color in this country. I started thinking about all the racial acts from white folks to me since I moved to this country in 1979. Everywhere from neighborhood to middle school to high school to college, in the workplace, in the restaurants. And I thought this country was better. And I realized that, wow, there's a lot of racist people around me. I walk around my neighborhood and people that I used to talk to on the sidewalk when we talk, and now I see Trump signs on the yard. And when I see them, I go, oh, wow, should I talk to them anymore? If they believe in Trump and Trump is a racist, are they racist like Trump? And so it made me a little bit more nervous about saying hi or talking to them or how I feel about them. And I like to go to the Riverside Park downtown La Crosse. I just drive through there in the weekends or when I'm free. And I've never seen trucks driving around there with the Confederate flags before, of all the years I lived in La Crosse. And I see more of that ever since Trump took over. I thought, wow, it made me nervous when I see those trucks really loud and with the flag go by. And I'm even afraid to look at the drivers and the people in there because they're white people, and I didn't want them to look at me badly or to look at me a hate. And I almost feel like, man, maybe I shouldn't come down here anymore. Maybe it's not safe to drive down here anymore. Or I thought maybe I should call the mayor of La Crosse and tell him how I feel driving down here or walking down here and see this truck drive around with the Confederate flags. And so it made my body more alert and more anxious and more stressed, walking around and seeing white people now and thinking, who is racist? Who hates me around here? Or do they like me? Do they hate me? When I go to the mall, go to the store, go to restaurants, because I'm going, if this many people voted for Donald Trump, that means there's a lot of racist people around here that like this idea. And so I was just thinking a lot about that. And I was also feel really sad about what happened to the people of color and Black people in this country for all these years. And I can't believe that the country that I thought was a really good country could be this bad. And I think that since Donald Trump took over, I have seen more racist acts around and like openly around, not afraid to be under the table anymore. So it's a deep sadness inside me, and I'm hoping that when Donald Trump is gone, that the country will go back to the one that I used to know. But I also thought, well, but the racist people are still here because now I know where they are, and I know that Wisconsin has a lot of them. So that's just my feeling as a person who's not white and have experienced many racial acts toward me living in the La Crosse, Wisconsin area.
Thanks, Shaundel and Dr. B. Nikki, were you trying to unmute?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, as you all know, I'm from Minnesota, but I'm a border jumper. I grew up in Wisconsin and came to Prairie Island, Red Wing area on the weekends or when we didn't have school when we were younger. And so I was still raised in my tribal community. But I experienced it worse in Wisconsin than I did in Minnesota. I was targeted because I was the only Native American in that school. All fine and dandy when I was younger, because when you're younger, I mean, it's just more innocent. They don't know to treat me any different because I don't look like them. They loved me for me. But once you got to the high school and middle school, things changed because you were different now. So coming over here, it was just a whole other light to be around people that looked like me. And so I have spent 40 years fighting for my right to be different in this city. And when all this had transpired, we had a lot of white women in particular with biracial children that started this Red Wing nonviolent protest group. And they have been holding people accountable. So for the first time in 40 years, I'm able to sit back and heal my trauma, my historical trauma, because that's a lot of the things that it's being filtered through is that historical trauma. And so my reaction maybe isn't the best either. So now that I'm able to heal and let these people fight the good fight for now, that's amazing. That means we're finally being heard in this area up here. Yeah, we still got a lot of work to do, but we actually, Prairie Island and Red Wing, entered into a partnership, a bridging of communities. And that was about 2 years ago. And I am so glad we started that work then, because during this time now, it is growing and getting bigger and stronger. So as a reflection of the climate of today, of what I've experienced and what I've been taught is for anything beautiful to happen, ugly must happen first. So I hold hope to that thought that this is just the acknowledgement of the foundation of this country. And just keep holding thought that this is getting brought out and it's getting addressed, fixed, and then we can move forward as a nation and heal. So those were just my thoughts on my experience.
Yeah, thank you. Ricardo or Rebecca, how are you experiencing this moment or reflecting on the here and now?
It kind of takes me back to my days on the south side of Chicago, or born and raised on the south side, and the racism that I felt there, and the segregation that existed there. And then to see all of this come to light today, it's kind of like a flashback. So, on the south side of Chicago, being pulled over by white Irish Chicago police and being pulled over and cars searched for drugs and being patted down, and just because the car looked like it shouldn't be in that neighborhood. But then you come here, there's racism that occurs around here. I've lived in the La Crosse area now 18 years. This is actually the longest I've ever lived in one house in my entire life. I've been with federal government for 40 years, trying to educate federal agencies and places that I've been to about the value of diversity and why diversity is important at all levels of the organization, so that the right decisions are made the first time. And I've done volunteer work in pretty much all the communities I've lived in. Before moving here, I lived in Duluth. So I've actually lived in Minnesota for about 25 years. And up in Duluth, I was a lot younger. My hair was jet black. And so there, with a white complexion and black hair, I fit in just fine, because so long as I didn't self-identify myself as a minority, they kind of thought I was Italiano. And if you're Italian in Duluth, that was fine. You're in the right community. But then I'm doing all this volunteer work for the Desegregation Integration Council for the Duluth Public Schools, and then a friend of mine says, "Why are you doing all that volunteer work?" I says, "Well, because I don't want to see the performance gap between majority and minority students closed. I want to contribute to the community, and that I'm Hispanic." Well, then my Polish friend said, "Holy cow, Ricardo," and I had known this gentleman for about 5 years. He said, "Ricardo, I don't think I can be your friend anymore." And I said, "What?" He said, "No, I'm serious. This has changed our whole dynamic." And I said, "Well, I value your friendship, and I want to continue this relationship, but it's your call." So, it's just little stuff like that that people of color run into every day, in subtle ways that make you feel like an outsider. So when I moved down here, and I tell people I moved down from Duluth, and again, jet black hair, white skin, everybody accepts you because, hey, all right, this man's not too bad. You come down here from Duluth. Now, if I had told them I moved here from this, that I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago, it might have been a whole different reaction. So, but, and then in the service, you know, I was reading Dr. B's bio. In the service, I was on one of the aircraft carriers out there on that day that the Vietnamese airlift out of Saigon occurred. And there, even in the service, there was segregation of Hispanics and blacks and whites on board the ship. An aircraft carrier, 5,000 people out in the middle of the ocean. So progress has been made, baby steps, but in 40 years, there's a long way to go, a big battle yet to go. And I keep trying to make a difference everywhere I go. And that's what I try to do.
Wow. I just wanted to add, so 2020, right? Ricardo just said the word progress, and that was a word that's actually been I've been stewing on as I've been listening to people, and I just feel like I have a different, 2020 has given me a lot of disillusionment with the word progress, I think. So my experience, and I want to say thanks to folks who mentioned the fact that you're speaking for yourself and your own experiences and not anyone else. I'll add that to what I'm saying too. It's when I'm talking tonight, I'm just talking from Rebecca. Yeah, I think this last year I've sort of alternated between really intense periods of motivation. Like, all right, we got stuff to do, let's do it. And then intense periods of just deep sadness. And I think for me, I've been trying to focus on or just figuring out like how to show up, but how to show up in new ways, in different ways, because the old ways, it's not working. And then spending time paying attention to how my privilege as a white woman allows me to opt out. And what that means. And I don't even always know what to do with that, but I'm just trying to pay attention to it. So, and opt in whenever and however I can. So that's what I have on 2020.
Thank you all. I'm sitting with, I think a few of you, maybe several of you talked about the pain, trauma, historical trauma, just the ability to very easily identify acts of racism, right? Or just concerns or fears or questions of like, is that racist? Is this person racist? And so I know that that's very easy for us, unfortunately, for many of us, and all too common. But so I want to kind of flip this conversation a little bit and see what you think about this, because Angela Davis says, in a racist society, it is not enough to be non-racist. We must be anti-racist. And we have additional scholars who have defined anti-racism as an active and conscious effort to work against multidimensional aspects of racism. Racism scholar Ibram X. Kendi says one is either racist or anti-racist. There is no room for neutrality, and there is no such thing as non-racist. Author Robin DiAngelo says anti-racism is a white problem. That means personal accountability and action are at the heart of being an anti-racist. And so I'm just wondering, what does anti-racism look like to you? And you don't all need to answer if you don't have a response, but I'm wondering if it's just how easy it is to identify, or maybe how difficult it is to identify what anti-racism is. And I'm not asking for a definition necessarily, although if you want to offer your own, feel free. But what does it look like when actualized? Like, what does it feel like? What can you point to say, like, here's an act of anti-racism, right? Or here's someone who I could identify as anti-racist, like in this moment. Just wondering, like, if you could share any observations in that regard.
I'll go first. So for me, it's more or less like a feeling. So to be anti-racist, the feeling would have to be much like when I go into the woods or into the garden, when I make that connection with plant life. You know, plant doesn't see me as a two-legged. I don't see plant as a plant with roots. I see it as a being, as a soul, and just as it does to me. And so it's a feeling. And so to be anti-racist, I would have to have that feeling where you recognize my soul and not my physical. And the feeling would have to be mutual, you know. And here's another thing that a lot of people are like, and especially I'm running for school board for Red Wing. And so I was listening to one of their meetings, and they were talking about equity. And something about like how somebody had said, well, nobody wants to be different. Wait a minute. That was the wrong statement to make. We should be treating everybody as like their differences and how unique that they are. And, you know, it's okay to be different, because how boring would it be if we all looked and were alike? So again, to be anti-racist, back to my first original comment, it would have to be a feeling first. That feeling of respect and honor that I have with like plant life. So that's to me what an anti-racist would be.
And I'll just add to that, because taking that feeling, then moving into an action, right? When we talk about anti-racism, recognizing that it is, and I completely and wholeheartedly agree that the ownership is on white people to do the anti-racism work, right? As people of color, we have our prejudice, right? Everybody has a prejudice, but when we talk racism from a systematic level and from a personal level, it is on white people to do the work. So when we say, what does anti-racism look like? To me, anti-racism looks like white people helping to dismantle and deconstruct and unlearn systems, right? And what I mean by that is, let's take protests. Like, I think it goes unknown, and I believe it was Nikki earlier who talked about the healing and the beauty, right, of being able to kind of, you know, sit back and just, you know, watch in our areas as so many white people stepped up. And they stepped up and they led the initiatives on anti-Blackness. They did that work, but it goes beyond that work, right? It goes beyond just like, oh, I'm gonna go protest today. But what are you doing every day in your life to make sure that you're consciously and becoming an anti-racist, or you're consciously dismantling and deconstructing a system that has been built on racism and oppression for so long, right? So really looking at some of that, going beyond preaching and talking equity, right? We have a lot of folks right now, like diversity and equity is a big thing. We want to do equity work in our schools. We want to do equity work in our hospitals. We want to do equity work. But beyond just saying it and it being a motto and it being just kind of this nice little fad, what are you doing to actively deconstruct your policies? What are you doing actively to deconstruct your leadership? What is your leadership doing on that personal level, right? So when we talk about this connection, is really, do you really see these people? Do you see us as human? Do you see me as a human being, or do you just see me as money? Because that's what really equity is becoming now, like this term for money. We believe in equity, so we go and we modify our product so we can make sure that diverse populations buy it. So take that into consideration of lacrosse. We can talk equity all day long, but until we truly talk about does everybody in your division or your department or your people that you see every day, do they truly, truly, wholeheartedly believe that racism is wrong and actively every day try to do something that dismantles or deconstruct a system that upholds and perpetuates racism daily?
To me, I think that anti-racist doesn't mean that I think I have a feeling first, but I must put that feeling into action. Because to be anti something, I have to speak about it. I have to, if I see an event that is somebody's being racist towards somebody, I have to speak against that. Let me give you an example. When I was in college at UW-La Crosse in the 80s, I would get this phone call from white people, white student in my classroom that leave me really bad messages, like harassing or racist messages on my answer machine. And so I began to feel like, who are these people? They're watching me. They know where I live. They know my phone number. And they call me and they harass me like this. So I get nervous when I walk to school at UW-La Crosse. I wonder if they follow me, are they watching me? Are they in my classroom? Who are these people, right? They call and they're just laughing and call me name and speaking Chinese or whatever language I think they're speaking to me. So I was a little bit concerned what's affecting me emotionally and academically. So I called the campus police and I say, hey, somebody is harassing me. Can we trace to see who are these people? Because there's more than one person that's doing this. And so we hook up the phone and we called them. And I told the police, the campus police, that when you catch these people, I want to talk to them. I want to see who they are, what they look like, because they're hurting me. And so when the campus police caught them, he called me and he said, oh, I just want you to know that I called the people that have been harassing you and I talked to them and they feel very sorry about it. So I let them go. So it's over, it's done with. They won't be calling you anymore. And I said, what? You made that decision? I told you I want to talk to them. I'm the victim here. What give you the right to settle this like this? And so I was really pissed. So I said, you are just being a racist just like them. You're supporting them with this racial action they did to me. So I went to the chancellor, to the principal of the university, and I said, I do not like this. I'm not happy with the police person on campus that did this to me. I want to talk to this person, these students that they caught, and I'm not gonna let this go. To me, that's anti-racist work. I am stopping a racial act. And so then I was able to talk to the chancellor. I was talking to the dean of student life, and we called the students that did that to me. I went and met them, and I told them what they did to me and how it made me feel. And so the dean punished them, saying that they need to do some community work. They had to write an article in the newspaper about this. And then one of the students, there was like a bunch of them, but they only punished 2 of them. And one of the students refused to do any of that. So he just got kicked out of UWL. And the other student had to do community hours, wrote the article on the newspaper and so on. And I met them, I told them how they made me feel. And I'll just like give it to them, and I feel like, to me, anti-racist, you had to confront it. You had to tell them to stop being racist. So That's what I have there. And if I see somebody, a white person do this to anybody else who's not white, I will say something. I will confront them and say it, even though I might put my life on the line. But I feel that I have to do something. There has to be an action. So that's just my view there.
Thank you, Dr. B. I think as I listen to you, that it reminds me of, many of my own stories and how easily it is to go right back to those moments, and how long they stick with us, and how they can change us. And as painful as those acts of racism are, I know for me, sometimes what has been more painful is like the acts of silence around it, right? Or the complicity, or the condoning, right? The acceptance. I know sometimes there's a different level of pain that comes with that. So thank you for sharing. As I asked this question, I'm like, I don't even know how I would answer. I think I really, I don't know that I've seen enough examples in my time. And so I was like, what does it look like? And like you said, Nikki, I think I know the feeling when I feel it, but gosh, I don't know that I've felt it a lot. But I do think about people who are in positions of power or in positions of comfort when we talk about racism. I think one thing that I can say is that anti-racism looks like risking something, giving something up. And I often wonder, what are some of these people around me willing to give up? Because there are costs to that. It takes a lot of courage, and within a system that is innately racist. And when you benefit from that, it requires courage and risk and giving something up. And when I think about that, I don't know, what I can point to as far as I don't have this overflowing list of examples where people were willing to give something up for the sake of racial justice. And so I'm struggling a bit in just even asking that question. So I appreciate some of your comments, and I will say that, and I think that is true. That is a piece of it. But I also think gosh, if people were just willing to see that there's also something to gain, right? By that, we risk friends, we risk family, we risk likability, we risk promotion. Sometimes we have to give up just basic comfort in order, especially as white people, in order to stand on the side of anti-racism. And yet, losses as those may be, I feel there's so much more to gain, your humanity. But I'm struggling to just share a bunch of examples. So I'm going to pause there for a moment, and Rebecca and Ricardo, if you wanted to share something, maybe when we come back we can do this. But I wanted to, I know I've seen some people raise their hands, and I don't know that everybody had heard at the beginning. So I just wanted to remind folks of just the setup. We're having a conversation with ourselves and asking the audience to just listen. And yet I know that there's other ways to engage too. And so we did want to build in a pause so that we can exhale as roundtable participants, and that you all can have the chance to share and engage in community. And so what we're going to do is we're going to send you off into some breakout rooms. I think it'll be about 5 people. We would ask that you introduce yourselves, meet somebody new. Maybe there's some co-conspirators in the room with you. So let's connect, because that is part of this work too. So please introduce yourselves. And if you could remember our community agreements. And I don't know, Josh, we have an awesome helper behind the scenes. So shout out to Josh Hurdle. I don't know if you can put the agreements back up before people head off. And then I'm going to give you something that some direction as far as what we're asking you to speak about. So just remember, when you're engaging with one another, to put on a learner's mindset. So I know we're all at different levels here, but if we can just be engaging so that and listening enough to be changed by what we hear. And as we listening toward understanding is what we're going for here, not necessarily toward agreement, choosing growth over comfort. When we're being honest and real, these conversations aren't comfortable, and that isn't the point. And so we ask you to lean into that discomfort, and then also focus on what you can change. I know these things can be daunting and so much bigger than all of us, but and so sometimes then, especially if we're able to opt out, like Rebecca said, it's easy to just throw our hands up and just be like, what can I do? But you can do a lot, and we can do a lot together. And so focus on what you can change yourself or your circles of influence. And what we're asking you to respond to, if you will, take in another direction if you need to, but we're staying on race and racism. And so the questions on the screen, could we put those up, Josh? What anti-racism work is or isn't happening within our community? And I think most of us are coming from the La Crosse area community, Greater La Crosse, but you might want to check that out when you do introductions. But so whatever community means to you. But also what anti-racism work is or isn't happening within yourself. And so we want you to wrestle with that, to name it, however your answer is. But if you are able to identify anti-racism, which I hope that some of us are, I also would ask, how do you know? Like, how do you know that it's anti-racist? Because I think that's an important question too. So we will send you these questions. We'll resend them once you're in your groups, and we're going to take about 20 minutes. So you'll have some time, but please share airtime. You get about 4 to 5 minutes each person, and then we'll come back and ask you to listen some more. Friends about how just, I don't know, validating, affirming, wonderful it is to have so many people in this conversation with us, even though you're all muted. We know you're there. We feel your presence, and it makes us really happy. So thank you for showing up, and thank you for coming back. So we're going to continue on. We're going to ask that you just listen some more, and then we'll try to wrap up by 8 o'clock. So Shaundel, Rebecca, Dr. B, Ricardo, Nikki. Black Lives Matter. This is a statement. It's a movement. It's a cry to stop killing us. It's also the bare minimum statement. And yet people all too often respond with all lives matter or blue lives matter or enter anything else into the conversation that you've heard. So I want to ask you, as with some of our diverse identities within this space, what does it mean to you to center Blackness in our conversations about race, to center Blackness in our anti-racism efforts, and to center Blackness in the quest for racial justice? How do you feel about that? And if we want to go in another direction too, like, what do you think others need to better understand about this centering?
As a Black man, I'll go first. If that's cool?
That's very cool. Yes.
I think centering Blackness, the best way to think about it for me is Alicia Walters, and I don't know if any of you have seen this article. I don't remember the name of it, but she kind of talked about how anti-Blackness is both the core wound and the organizing principle of this country. And, oftentimes we hear a lot of folks say, when Black lives matter, then all lives will matter. And the reality of it is really owning the fact that historically, Black people have been diminished, dehumanized, disregarded, thrown away, shot and killed, lynched, burned, so many other things. And not saying that Black folks are the only, racial group or ethnic group that experience this. And also to say that we still experience it in so many ways, even in 2020. since our existence. So we can't deny that. And we also know that when Black folks get rights, then every other racially diverse group receive those rights as well. So when we talk about centering Blackness, I think the reality of it is that what are you doing to modify and or correct the wrongs that have happened to Black people, right? We talk again, I like throwing it out here, economic justice, social justice, racial justice, environmental justice, systematic racism. How do you take on a Black lens and say Black folks have been held down and oppressed economically, environmentally, and so on and so forth? And what do we need to do to flip that and switch it so that we can make it right, so that we can all heal and grow together?
Yes, well said.
For me, when I think of in terms of like, say, let's think in terms of like, when you say breast cancer matters, it doesn't mean prostate cancer is not matter. It doesn't mean lung cancer is not matter. It just means there's a lot of breast cancer going on. And so we need to focus especially on breast cancer right now. So when we talk about Black Lives Matter, there's a lot of violence against Black people right now by the cops. And racism has been against Black people for a long, long, long time. And so when we say that, we're not saying that the other lives are not matter. We're saying that it seems to us like we are not treating Black lives like everybody else's lives. So we need to focus on Black lives and stop killing Black people, start hurting Black people, start treating like a human being like all of us, like white people treating white people. I think that's all it means. And so when I hear a white person say, all lives matter, why is it only Black lives matter? I think you either don't understand or you're just blatant racist and you don't care about Black lives. That's why you say that. Because when I say breast cancer matters, I don't mean the other cancers are not matters. I'm just saying that there's too much breast cancer going on. So we need to put extra focus on breast cancers. That's all I meant. So I think that white people need to understand that and quit defending. When you say, oh, all lives matter, you actually racist against Black lives. You're saying you don't care about Black lives. You're saying that all this racism toward Black people in this country is not matters. And it doesn't deserve special attention. That's what it means to me. So to me, I think Black Lives Matter, and I think we should focus more on that because there's a lot of Black people are being treated unfairly in schools, in the workplace, on the street, by police, in jails, everywhere. So Black Lives Matters.
Yeah, thank you. I don't get it. I don't get why that's so controversial. And I know I've talked with many people, maybe some in this call, that like, I believe are about the cause and support it, but and especially in positions of power or like statements that come out, like there's been a struggle to actually like say that sometimes. I'm working with a school district that and talked with kiddos within that school district. And this was the thing that I tried to ask a bunch of different questions and they kept coming back to Black Lives Matter and then all lives matter. And this is what we have to deal with in school from their peers. And then I asked about their teachers, the staff, the administration, and they said like, there isn't space to talk about it within like the classroom or the curriculum, not intentional space. And, they haven't heard any of their teachers say that. And I asked them, like, what would it mean to see like Black Lives Matter on a poster within, a classroom, or to have your teacher say that? And they said everything. It would mean everything. And then when I asked, why hasn't that happened? Like, do you agree with that? And yet there's just like this, I don't know. I mean, I know we politicize everything, but like Black Lives Matter. I mean, that is not, it's not controversial. And I think all of this rhetoric and this pushback and having to come up with all these things that we never said before people said Black Lives Matter is just more indication of what we're trying to say, right? Like the fact that people have to come back at that so much, the statement that Black Lives Matter, simply. I mean, it's confusing, it's frustrating, and it's painful, so painful. And to hear those students, like, I mean, that's a small ask, right? And like I said, the bare minimum to hear somebody that you look up to or somebody who's in a power of influence, or position of power influence, to just simply say Black Lives Matter. And there's something holding us back from that.
And we've made it so political. It's like either you're with it or Blue Lives Matter.
Yeah.
It's either you're with Black Lives Matter or you're like completely anti, or you're for the government. And so if you're Black Lives Matter, it's anti-government, it's anti-white, it's anti-everything. And so you're either over here or you're way over here. And that's just how we do it all the time. And it's like, race has been so politicized right now. It's annoying because all we're saying really is like, we just want to live, right? Like I want to live and be able to be happy and exist and walk around and not feel like I can't buy a house because I'm worried if the lender is going to be racist. I can't rent a home because my landlord might be racist or, you know, try to hurt or harm me in some way, shape, or form, psychologically or mentally. I can't go to school because I'm not going to learn about who I am, and I have to learn about all these white folks and hear about these injustices and really don't even pay attention to the injustices. We talk about this nice little America and ignore all of the atrocities and the pain that has been caused. And we just keep doing it. And it's a vicious cycle. And all we want to say is we matter. Pass policies that show that we matter. Address our environments because we matter. Let us exist. See us as human. But I will say at the same time, like, honestly, I think we're tired of also begging for it. Mm-hmm. Right? Please, white folks, just see it. No, we're not doing that no more. We're done with that. Do it now. Like, it's time.
You know what? I'm going to segue there if that's okay. And again, we'll try to bring some other voices in, but I think it's important that the Black voices were centered in the conversation, but I think it's a good segue too. And so I wanted to show you all about a 7-minute video that I saw shortly after the murder of George Floyd, as our country experienced major unrest that took the form of protests and riots and looting. And as my newsfeed got contaminated with like unproductive and uninformed judgment and opinions and back and forth. And then as I was negotiating, Shaundel, you had said earlier, just like feeling a lot of things, but numb was one of those, like some major numbness. I remember coming across this video and it made me feel, and I think it's so important to feel, but I get why we go numb lots of times. And I think that I think that we need to give ourselves permission for that as BIPOC folks. I think the numbness within some of my white peers, I would challenge a little bit more. But I mean, it makes sense. But I was like, I didn't want to feel numb, but that's like, it was an overwhelming feeling. But when I came across this video, it made me feel, and it made me feel all of the feels. But I never processed it with anyone. And so I want to share it with you all and just have this shared experience, and then we can process it together for a little bit, and then we'll have to move forward. I haven't watched it since then, but if I recall correctly, there may be some F-bombs or other curse words. And so for those of you who are watching alongside of us, if you're not a fan of profanity, please don't let that derail the message. Please resist any urge to be more offended by swear words than what Kimberly Jones is saying to us. So with that, we're going to play the video, 7 minutes, and then we'll process.
So I've been seeing a lot of things talking of the people making commentary. interestingly enough, the ones I've noticed that have been making the commentary are wealthy black people, making the commentary about we should not be rioting, we should not be looting, we should not be tearing up our own communities. And then there's been an argument of the other side of we should be hitting them in the pocket. We should be focusing on the blackout days where we don't spend money. But, you know, I feel like we should do both. And I feel like I support both. And I'll tell you why I support both. I support both because when you have a civil unrest like this, there are three types of people in the streets. There are the protesters, there are the rioters, and there are the looters. The protesters are there because they actually care about what is happening in the community. They want to raise their voices, and they are there strictly to protest. You have the rioters who are angry, who are anarchists, who really just want to shit up, and that's what they're going to do regardless. And then you have the looters. And the looters almost exclusively are just there to do that, to loot. Now, people are like, well, what did you gain? Well, what did you get from looting? I think that as long as we're focusing on the what, we're not focusing on the why, and that's my issue with that. As long as we're focusing on what they're doing, we're not focusing on why they're doing. And some people are like, well, those aren't people who are legitimately angry about what's happening. Those are people who just want to get stuff. Okay, well then, let's go with that. Let's say that's what it is. Let's ask ourselves why in this country in 2020, the financial gap between poor blacks and the rest of the world is at such a distance that people feel like their only hope and only opportunity to get some of the things that we flaunt and flash in front of them all the time is to walk through a broken glass window and get it. That they are so hopeless that getting that necklace, getting that TV, getting that change, getting that bed, getting that phone, whatever it is that they're going to get, is that in that moment when the riots happen and if they present an opportunity of looting, that's their only opportunity to get it. We need to be questioning that why. Why are people that poor? Why are people that broke? Why are people that food insecure, that clothing insecure, that they feel like their only shot, that they are shooting their shot by walking through a broken glass window to get what they need? And then people want to talk about, well, there's plenty of people who pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and got it on their own. Why can't they do that? Let me explain to you something about economics in America. And I'm so glad that as a child, I got an opportunity to spend time at Push where they taught me this, is that we must never forget that economics was the reason that black people were brought to this country. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Do you understand that? That's what we came to do. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Now, if I right now decided that I wanted to play Monopoly with you, and for 400 rounds of playing Monopoly, I didn't allow you to have any money, I didn't allow you to have anything on the board, I didn't allow for you to have anything, and then we played another 50 rounds of Monopoly, and everything that you gained and you earned while you were playing that round of Monopoly was taken from you. That was Tulsa, that was Rosewood. Those are places where we built black economic wealth, where we were self-sufficient, where we owned our stores, where we owned our property, and they burned them to the ground. So that's 450 years. So for 400 rounds of Monopoly, you don't get to play at all. Not only do you not get to play, you have to play on the behalf of the person that you're playing against. You have to play and make money and earn wealth for them, and then you have to turn it over to them. So then for 50 years, you finally get a little bit and you're allowed to play. And every time that they don't like the way that you're playing, or that you're catching up, or that you're doing something to be self-sufficient, they burn your game. They burn your cards. They burn your Monopoly money. And then finally at the release and the onset of that, they allow you to play and they say, okay, now you catch up. Now at this point, the only way you're going to catch up in the game is if the person shares the wealth, correct? But what if every time you share the wealth, then there's psychological warfare against you to say, oh, you're an equal opportunity hire. So if I played 400 rounds of Monopoly with you and I had to play and give you every dime that I made, and then for 50 years, every time that I played, if you didn't like what I did, you got to burn it like they did in Tulsa and like they did in Rosewood, how can you win? How can you win? You can't win. The game is fixed. So when they say, why do you burn down the community? Why do you burn down your own neighborhood? It's not ours. We don't own anything. We don't own anything. Trevor Noah said it so beautifully last night. There's a social contract that we all have, that if you steal or if I steal, then the person who is the authority comes in and they fix the situation. But the person who fixes the situation is killing us. So the social contract is broken. And if the social contract is broken, why the f do I give a shit about burning the Football Hall of Fame, about burning the Target? You broke the contract when you killed us in the streets and didn't give up. You broke the contract when for 400 years we played your game and built your wealth. You broke the contract when we built our wealth again on our own by our bootstraps in Tulsa and you dropped bombs on us. When we built it in Rosewood and you came in and you slaughtered us. You broke the contract, so your Target, your Hall of Fame. As far as I'm concerned, they could burn this bitch to the ground. And it still wouldn't be enough. And they are lucky that what black people are looking for is equality and not revenge.
I'm just letting us sit in silence for a second. Just sit with that. Nikki, Dr. B, Rebecca, Shaundel, Ricardo. Any feelings you want to share or thoughts or reactions?
Yeah, the concept of if you work hard in this country, you can do anything, you can get your dream, all of that stuff. I think it's only true for white people. But people of color, you work really hard, but there's so much racist institutionally and structurally to block you. And I've been doing a lot of reading about institutional racism in the workplace, in the school, and there's a lot of roadblocks that prevent all of us from getting where we get to. There are wages in the companies and the job that white people can pay more than people of color. There's school enrollment that white people get more enrollment than we do, and so on, so on, so on. They've been studied, they have to study to prove this. And so I totally understand the video, the person in there, and I feel the anger and the frustration. And I think if you're a white person and you have not understand the institutional racism, because you are living a life where you believe that when you work hard, you get what you want, and you don't understand that that's not true for us, you will not understand her feeling and the video and how we feel. But if you live in our shoes, you will totally understand the meaning of that. And for example, for the white woman in the audience, just think of patriarchal. Do you think that you get paid as same as white men, as white women? Do you think that your opportunity for jobs and for respect and for pay the same as white men in the workplaces? No. Well, for us, it's like that to white people. So in case you're a white person and you don't understand what I'm talking about, what the video is talking about, this is true. There's a lot of statistics out there. They done study where they just have applications of Black names and white names, and they send them to companies to apply for a job. and the white names get phone calls for interviews more than the black names. Just by your name, they're already racist toward you. You already lose your opportunity to get a job, or to get promoted, or to get going up the ladder. So I totally feel it, and it's totally unfair. And it's totally not true for us that if you work really hard, you'll get what you want than it is for white people.
I want to make her my new best friend. The amount of passion when she was communicating, sometimes some people need their cages rattled in order, they need their world shook up a little bit in order to understand the message. It was incredibly powerful. I felt every single emotion of hers and frustration. And if I wasn't already in the work I was in now, that video definitely, and if I wasn't the race that I am now, if I was just white, I definitely would be signing up where I can start making a difference. And it's true. Everything that was said is exactly true.
I know when I watch that, I'm like, I think the anger is one of the many emotions that comes through. And I've said this before, but I don't understand how we're not all that angry. Like, how are we not all that angry? And I think like the anger that is so justified that many of us have gets like used against us. But I just think like, God, like how someone else had said it, but like, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. And I think also at the end, I thought that was so powerful, and just another reminder of like, I feel like Black and brown folks, like we have, I mean, it's gotta be a superhuman resilience to endure the way that we have, and not that we should have had to, but the amount of restraint that I think many of us exercise on a daily basis is like, it's superhuman. And once in a while it comes out, and then we're like put in our place, or like we're not, well, maybe we'd listen to you if you weren't so angry. And then like it just, go ahead, Shaundel.
No, you're right where I'm at. And that last line is probably, for me, one of the biggest hitters for me. Right? Like that's the emotion. And just, you should be glad we're asking for equality and not revenge. Mm-hmm. That spoke to me like nobody's business, because I think about how I live every day, right? Let's talk education lines, right? Like, I have a master's degree. I'm in my doctoral program. You know how many games I had to play to get there? What I had to navigate through in order to get there? The constant whiteness that surrounds you, right? We learn white people. I always talk about this, even when I was a cultural liaison. We spent years sitting at a desk to learn about white people and the way white people do things. But white folks have never had to sit down in a desk and take years to learn about who we are, what we contributed to this society, right? The atrocities that they've committed or their ancestors have played a role in. We don't talk about that type of stuff. And so, like, as a Black man, and I sit back and I think about how, like, even right now, I'm passionate and probably not, I'm trying not to be angry, and I'm like trying to micromanage my emotions when I have the justification to be mad. And I'm telling myself, don't get too angry. They might not take it well. But that's your every day. like all the time. Don't get me wrong. I have happy days. I got a great family. I got people that surround me. I have some white allies that I'll actually like. And there's some that I just rather like push away, but we're going to leave that alone. But like, but to think about like every day I have to navigate and figure out when I wake up this morning, how do I keep my composure if somebody says, call me an N-word? When I wake up this morning, I got to speak positivity into myself because there's a system that has chosen to make sure that I know or they see me as the underdog or dehumanize me in some way or try to castrate me as a Black man. And I have to speak positivity into myself. Imagine as me as a Black man working with young people, and I got to constantly speak into these young people's lives to remind them how great they can be and who they are and how great they are. Because they're in a system and in a community that chooses to figure out ways to basically vilify them. And I'm not going to take up too much time, but like, this is our everyday. And there's policies and systems and people that perpetuate this every day. So yeah, I'm with her. Burn the shit down. Who cares? Because at the end of the day, you're going to get the money to build it back. But my existence will still be minimal to you.
I have patients that come see me and tell me they're complaining about all the burning the building down, damaging their business. That's all they talk about to me. And I said, why do you think they do that? They don't even think about the social injustice. I said, what do you think started all of this? It's because Mr. Derek killed Mr. Floyd with his knee on the street unjustly. That's why people are protesting and they're not being heard. So remember how this all started. Because the white people that I know that complain to me, they focus on the business, the window that got burned. They don't even think of Mr. Floyd. They don't even think of what Mr. Derek did. And that's frustrating to me. And so I had to talk to them and say, do you know why they did what they did? Because of all the injustice happening to them. When I watched the video, I cry at the end every time. This is the third time I watch it, and I can feel the anger build up inside me, just like it built up inside her at the end. I just want to hug her and say, I feel your pain too. And I wonder how many white people watch this video and feel the emotion that I feel too, or do they feel something else? I like to talk to them. Do they feel like, oh, she's just angry and complaining, or do they feel like, I feel you, I feel your pain? Because if you don't feel her pain, that means that you are on the other side of racism, and you are not the victim. That's why you don't feel it. We all feel it. As people of color, we all feel what she's saying. We all understand what she's saying. I do.
Yeah, and it pisses me off that this isn't the video that I watched. I mean, it maybe has changed. Like, she was not censored before. I noticed that she's censored now. And for whatever reason that may be, but again, my ask was for people to not be more offended by that than, like, you know, the actual message. And so I was frustrated to see that like was censored, and perhaps was a call maybe that she would have even supported, because again, it's like, maybe then somebody will listen and not write it off. But like, that is part of the emotion. Like, sometimes there are no other words that can capture the anger and the feelings. So that is a technical tangent, but I wasn't ready for that.
But to your point earlier, Amanda, when you talk about anti-racism looks like this. Anti-racism looks like white folks having people have to yell at them, and they sit there and they take it. And what I mean by this is because even as a Black man, I recognize we're not talking gender specifically, but like we're talking Black, so we're gonna go across. For Black women, I remember sitting in a room and I had a group of Black women and they yelled at us. They yelled at me and like 3 other Black men, and they talked about how they felt like Black men was not supporting them. And you know what? We didn't argue with them. We didn't try to negate their feelings. We sat there and we took it. And we said, okay, now let's figure out what we can do as men to make sure these Black women feel supported on our campus. That's the type of anti-racism we need. For white folks to say, we see your anger, we feel it, we don't live it, but we hear based on what you're saying, and we know that there's something that we need to do beyond just reading a book, beyond just showing up to a protest, beyond just going to my nice big house with my family and dressing up in suits and going to work and saying I show up. What are you really truly doing to make sure that you're in the anti-racism world and not in this justify Black bodies lying on the street or trying to negate the emotions of Black people because it might not come off the way you want it to?
See, I think that when people speak emotion and they cry and they yell and they swear, because it means something to them deep inside, it's touching their heart and soul. And the thing about white culture is that they so intellectualize everything. And they look at emotion as being a bad and angry thing. No, angry is good because it shows that you care and it hurts you. If you don't get angry and you don't swear and just talk very intellectually, it's almost come across like it doesn't touch you deep inside. And so other cultures had learned to express with their heart and with their brain and with their anger and feelings. White people have learned so much to intellectualize everything, and then they don't feel it, or even if they feel it, they're not showing it. So when I talk to white people about racial issues, I feel like they're just so dead. It doesn't mean anything to them, or it's not inside their heart, or they just don't care enough. That's the message I get from my body reading their bodies. When I watch this video, it means so much to her. She can feel the pain coming out of her. She has experienced it.
But the funny thing about that, Dr. B, though, is when white women cry, there's a different response.
Yes, true.
Right? Like everybody's like, oh, we got to stop what we doing. A white woman's crying.
Yes, true. Yeah.
Well, like, I don't know who was saying it before, but I know since the start of like all this with the George Floyd, you know, a lot of white people, the world the way it is right now, it's incredibly unsettling for them. Incredibly. And, you know, this is awful, but the way I like to describe it, I'm like, this has been my internal struggles living in Western society, your world, this whole time. And in these 40 years, I've had to fight for my survival in your world. So just what month are we in? So that was May, June, July, August, September, October. We're 5 months into this. And white people are already over it. But us ethnic people, we've been living this for our ancestors, 500 years. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like, and I know in one of the meetings, they were trying to figure out verbiage and stuff. And one white woman didn't like the word systematic racism because it hurt. And I'm like, you don't like the word systematic racism because it hurts. So imagine what the actual feeling has gone through. So I don't care if it hurts your feeling hearing those words, you're going to hear it because you're going to get less than 1/4 of what I've experienced just by listening to those words.
Let me share with you what I just went through last week with the white man. A white man told me that we'll talk about this, and he said that instead of talking about how Mr. Floyd was killed by Mr. Derek, he said, well, did you know that Mr. Floyd has so many drugs in his blood? I said, what does that have anything to do with it? That doesn't deserve to be dead. well, he got drugs inside his body. You know, he's not clean and he's violent and he has history of crime. I said, that does not mean a thing here. Mr. Derek didn't have to kill him. Mr. Derek killed him cold blood in open daylight. Why don't you talk about Mr. Derek and his history and that he's a murderer instead of blaming Mr. Floyd that he has drug in his blood? That's why he deserved to be killed. I don't understand this. You're not talking about the victim or the predator. You talk about the victim's blood and that he deserved to be killed because he has chemicals in his blood. I don't get it. So I had this whole discussion with this white guy. And at the end, I just let him have it. And just like, what's wrong with you? What he did was wrong. He killed a person who does not deserve to be killed. It doesn't matter if he has 10,000 drugs in his blood. He should not be killed for whatever he's doing. That's not even enough to deserve a death. And at the end, he's just like, okay. You know, he's a white guy. And you know that that's how they talk. They talk about blaming the victim all the time.
And similarly, we do that all the time here, right? Like, oh, you know, I look at the kids that I used to work with and they used to talk about how white folks would call them the N-words with, you know, pretty much even with all of this has amplified, right? And they get called the N-word and the first justification you hear from the adults is, well, the black kids use the N-word all the time. So why should we be worried about it if the white kids are using it? And then the black kids have to educate their teacher. What? They got to educate their teachers and administration on why the word is what it is and why it hurts when a white person say it versus when a black person say it. When the reality is, I'm telling you that I'm hurt by the fact that this kid just said this. Can you address it? And we constantly figure out ways, and I need to stop saying we, white folks constantly figure out ways to justify racism instead of addressing it. And we know these issues exist. Like we know, right? Like we know housing discrimination exists. We know that racism exists in the classroom. We know that. We know this. We know this. We've known it for years. This is nothing new to anybody. Fix it. Address it. Just like you pass policies to stop everything else, pass policies to stop racism. Just like you pass policies to gain money, pass policies to end racism and put wealth back into poor Black and brown communities. I don't know, it seems simple, and maybe it seems simple to us because we live it every single day. But I just think it's simple solutions that we're just not trying to hear because white folks are in power and they want to maintain that power. And they need to check their superiority complex that was gained to them through their white the slave owners and their ancestral lineage.
Well, you know, white people are really good at fixing problems because they make new cars, new cell phone, new airplane, new home every year. As soon as that car comes out, they already make a new one. They're already updating, innovating new ideas. If they want to get rid of racism in this country, it would be gone already. They do not want to because it benefits them and it's not about them. They don't care. That's why they're not touching it. They're not fixing it, in my opinion. If they want to, they would have done it. And so we can speak until, you know, we blow up, we die and our kids speak up and they die. They're still not gonna fix it. And so I'm telling white people, you gotta fix it. This is your country. Your people are hurting people of color. If you love us, you respect us human beings, please fix it. Make it better for all of us. We love this country. We love you. We just want you to love us back. We are human under God. The creator created all of us. We are different brother and sister from different mother, different skin color, but we're all human beings with the human race. We love you and please love us back.
You know, I'm gonna, I know we're getting close to time here, but I want to bring it back to the beginning. And I see that there are still 98 people in this conversation. And so I want to thank you for listening. And I sometimes struggle with expressing that gratitude because like That's a pretty low bar to just listen. But that is part of this work. And this is why we set this up this way, even though I know there are many white folks listening who care deeply and have thoughts and have feelings. And it's not that those don't matter. But if we want to engage in racial justice work, we have to center the voices and the feelings of the people who are most impacted by racism. And so this was very intentional. I know it's a long time to just sit and listen, and yet like we're not listening enough. And so listen more, believe us, and know that that's also not enough. I mean, that's the bare minimum. So let me try to wrap some of this up. I still am going to ask the last question that I had, and we'll try to end shortly after 8, but if people need to go, feel free. But wanting to just see where you're at with this. And again, you don't all need to answer. And we can go to Ricardo and Rebecca first. If you all like, Rebecca, I know you're very much decentering yourself and your whiteness, and appreciate that. But definitely want to invite you to share if you have any thoughts. I know we haven't heard from you two as much. So if you want to start, great. And if not, that's cool too. But these times that we're living in will be a part of history, right? Like this year will be a part of history. And so my last question to you all is, what is the story that needs to be told to those who come after us about the here and now? Or what do you hope will be written in the next chapter?
May I go?
Yeah.
Well, as our prophecies and what has been told to me is that the creation story of America is that our people knew that one day that there was going to be all walks of life from all different directions, and they were going to come to Turtle Island, and one day that the earth was going to get very sick, and that all those 4 different nations were going to come together in peace and harmony and save Earth. I know the world seems really ugly and bad right now, but we have to hold hope to that. We have to have something to look forward to. We have to have something to fight the good fight for. Because I know we get tired. I know we get exhausted, but we have to keep going. We have to fulfill that prophecy. Because that's our purpose here for all of us to coexist in peace and harmony.
I love that. I've read that prophecy too. I love it. I think for me, I think the hope is that we're able to say that because of this unrest, we moved into a place of healing and growing together and rectifying wrongs. That's the optimism in me, right? Like the optimism for me is just like, this was it. This was it, and we won't have to experience it anymore. So now the turn is, let's rebuild, dismantle racism, and we're done perpetuating racism and various things like that. That's what I want to say, right? And that's what there's a part of me that really believes that. Believe it or not, I really do believe that we can come together and build a nation that makes sense. Unfortunately, I feel like also that there might be a lot more civil unrest before that actually happens. But that doesn't mean that it can't happen in this community. We don't have to look like the rest of the nation. But if we choose to ignore the fact that racism happens in La Crosse and it's built into our systems and we perpetuate it, and that there's a lived experience that is happening for people of color that is different from white people, that civil unrest will definitely be in La Crosse. Don't take it as a threat, take it as a reality, because people are tired. So we need to make sure that we do what we need to do in our community to come together and really rectify all of the wrongs that have happened.
Don't be afraid of diversity and inclusion. Embrace it, welcome it. We could be stronger for it. We could be much better than we are as a community in your part of the world, this small little section of the world that we live in. And we can make it so much better. And you know, when I was doing some work for the Chicano Latino Advisory Council for the Minnesota State Legislature and the Minnesota governor, we had Senator Wellstone just before his accident come to us and ask us, how can we make this state a more welcoming state, more inclusive state? And I said, well, you need to make people who come to this country with degrees in law and medicine, you need to find a way to respect and honor their degrees instead of having them be janitors. The whole goal is for society to grow and to prosper and to pay taxes. Your state will grow if you welcome people. And the same thing here in La Crosse. And La Crosse could be so much stronger and more profitable and better if you are inclusive and embrace and welcome people that are coming to your community. Don't, you know, even living in this residence that I'm in, my prior neighbor said, you know, the guy that lived before you in your house, he never came out and said hello. You come out and say hello. We know who you are. You know, we help each other with our lawns and snow removals and everything else. La Crosse, we can do better. You can do better. We will do better.
I like to think of we are what we eat in the foods that nourish us and become us. And I think that people believe in eating a mixed green salads because there are so many different plants and different ingredients in the mixed green salads, because each of those mixed green has its own nutrients, colors, and bioflavonoids to help nourish us. And I think that America is great because we have lots of immigrants coming here and share their innovations and their ideas to invent different things and make this country great. That's why. So I'm asking white people in power to let go the control and the wealth and share with all of us. You depend on us, we depend on you. We need each other. And just don't focus so much on your greed and your power, because without us, you won't be able to survive either. So we need each other, and treat us right, and we'll treat you right. We can grow together and treat us as human beings. And don't look so much about the power and the money. We're all brother and sister from the same creator. And just treat us right, and we'll love each other. And we'll make this world better for all our children. Teach our language and our culture and our wisdom in the school curriculum so that your children and our children can be smarter. Just like you love our food. You love our foods because our food tastes good. We also have wisdom and knowledge that can also help your children to be smarter and better human beings, to love each other too. So think of us that we are just like you. We're a brother and sister of yours, and treat us human beings like we treat you, and make this world a better place. You have not been sharing for 400 years. How long are you gonna do this for? And what are you gonna say to the creator when you meet the creator and the creator said, why are you so mean to these other people? Why are you so controlling? Why aren't you sharing? What are you gonna say to the creator? There's life after this one, you know. So I'm just asking white people in power, be prepared to meet your creator, do the right thing, share your wealth and your power with all of us, and treat us just like you would treat your own brother and sister and yourself.
Thank you, Dr. B. Rebecca?
I just want to say it's been an honor to witness and absorb and be challenged and changed by the power and the wisdom in this space. So
Thank you. Shaundel, you got the last word. I know you had spoke, but you're going to say something, right?
I was going to be quiet.
Oh.
No, I'll say, and the other thing that I'm going to throw out, since we are, in a political election, it's election year, vote. But when you vote, I want you to think about the individuals. Don't just vote for yourself, vote for other folks too. And I really truly mean that, because it's real easy to go and vote based off of what's going to benefit you, but think about what's actually going to benefit this country, and not just this country, but the marginalized people that live in this country and have to experience racism and hate and disadvantages every single day. Vote for them and not just for yourself.
And as a veteran, I echo, vote. Didn't come free.
Well, I think we will pause there, and I say pause because we can't stop, and this work must continue. And we need all of you. You heard from several of us about being tired, and yet we're still in it. If you're not tired, you maybe haven't been in it as long as us, and no judgment there, just get in it and give some of us a break, right? And so that we can stay in it and come back. I want to thank my roundtable friends, Dr. B, Rebecca, Shaundel, Ricardo, Nikki, for this gift tonight. I want to acknowledge the emotional labor, and especially when you all would be justified to refrain from staying in this, from reliving the trauma, from re-engaging after disappointment and disappointment. It is a gift for all of us. And so for those of you listening, if you found any value in it, please give them some love by getting in the work and staying in the work. With that, I wanted to let you all know that we have a couple more events coming up. On October 14th, a virtual town hall on housing lenders and homelessness. On October 28th, we have a workshop on amplifying the voices of Black youth and their parents in the La Crosse area. So we hope you can join us for that. You can get more information at the La Crosse Waking Up White website. So again, thank you all for being here, for listening. Please keep listening, and also be on the lookout for a survey that we'll be sending out shortly after this event or in the day or two that follows, so that we can get your feedback and your thoughts, because I know we didn't give you much of a chance to share now, but it does matter, and we do want to hear them. Just need to be intentional about like who we're centering in this work. So we definitely want to hear from you, and we definitely hope to see you next time. So have a good night, everyone.
Night.